So we'll continue with the potassium sparing diuretics. So when we see this potassium sparing diuretics, that is a spironolactone, aldosterone. This is the aldosterone antagonist. So what is it? It will aldosterone antagonist. Because of why? What will be happening? Spironolactone, generally it is a steroid chemical. Mostly it is a mineral. It is related to the mineralocorticoid aldosterone. So moreover, aldosterone, it will act on the aldosterone generally acts on the cells of late distal convoluted tubules and collecting ducts. How it will be? By attaching the intracellular mineralocorticoid receptors are attached to the distal convoluted and collecting duct. The collecting duct attach and including that it helps us to formation of the aldosterone induced protein, that is a AIP. So because of this AIP there will be a sodium reabsorption and then potassium secretion will be seen. So what will in spironolactone will definitely it will act in the interstitial side of the renal tubular cells that attach to the mineralocorticoid receptors, and it may competitively inhibit the formation of APIs. So what will be happening overallly we'll see means normally aldosterone will act on the cells of where this aldosterone where it will be acting on the cells of the distal convoluted tubule and collecting tract. So you assume the distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. So there will be a intracellular mineralocorticoid receptors. So just like the calcium receptors, there will be some of the intracellular mineralocorticoid receptors. Because of this presence of the mineralocorticoid receptors, there will be formation of the aldosterone induced protein. So aldosterone will induce to produce some type of proteins. That protein is called AIP. So this AIP will causes the sodium reabsorption and potassium will be excreted generally. So to prevent that, because it will to prevent what will be happening, this spironolactone will act over the mineralocorticoid receptors that are attached to the renal tubules. So these spironolactone will act on the mineralocorticoid receptors and helps in inhibiting the formation of the APIs. So because of this inhibition, there is no sodium reabsorption and potassium excretion cannot be seen. This is the action mostly. And then spironolactone is a mild diuretic. So it is a mild diuretic because most can be filtered sodium. So most of the filtered sodium has been already reabsorbed in the proximal part of the tubule, one thing. And then however this antagonist potassium loss can be caused by this antagonist loss. Sometimes it may be caused by some of the diuretics. Because of this, sometimes it can be given with the spironolactone can be given with combination of the diuretics also. It is a weak diuretic and it mostly given combination with the it can be given with combination and then for a more efficacy. Available as 25 mg, 50 mg and 100 mg it can be given, and mostly orally it given and then peak instance can be given in 3 hours, half-life 1.3 hours, duration 2 to 3 days. And 2 to 3 days it can be and then sometimes it is given in alternate diets also. Indications and dosages, we'll see indications same: edema, hypertension, diuretics, induced hypokalemia. When there is a diuretics induced hypokalemia, it can be given. And moreover so severe heart failure, primary aldosteronism. So because of the diuretics, loop diuretics, whenever we are giving loop diuretics or anything, but sometimes the patient may go into the hypokalemia because of this aldosterone action, and then because of this aldosterone action, there will be a potassium loss will be there. So then that may lead to the hypokalemia. So this aldosterone action, this aldosterone can be given. And one more thing, primary hyperaldosteronism is also in there. These are some of the doses. So in case of edema, 100 mg daily or single dose, or sometimes divided doses also given. Usually 25 to 200 mg can be given. Adult doses diuretics 25 to 100 mg daily can be given. In case of heart failures, 25 mg once daily can be given. One more thing, drug interaction, AC inhibitors and lithium type of drugs may cause a lithium toxicity. And contraindications, hypersensitivity, sometimes anuria, acute renal insufficiency can be seen, and hyperkalemia, and some in case of Addison's disease, which is also contraindicated. Next, going to the amiloride. So when we see, it is a renal epithelial sodium channel blocker. So in epithelial tissues, it may block the sodium channel blockers. So it is also thiazides and loop diuretics act by causing a net loss of sodium and water in the urine, and effect called diuresis. So what will happen? There will be because of the thiazides and loop diuretic, when they act, there will be loss of the sodium and water from the urine, and because of this the effect is called as diuresis. And then when the high sodium load reaching the distal tubule result in net loss of potassium from the body, which may result in hypokalemia also. And moreover, this drug and other potassium sparing diuretics are useful to offset to counter potassium excretion effects and this stronger diuretics. So we'll go with the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. So when we see carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, acetazolamide is a drug. It can be used. It is a derivative of the they inhibit the calcium, reversible inhibition of the calcium in proximal tubule cells. So it can be seen for proximal tubule cells, there is a reversible inhibition of the calcium channels, and then it may resulting in the CO2 hydration and reducing the availability of H2 to exchange with the luminal sodium and H2 antiporter. So because of this inhibition of the calcium, there may be decreasing of the H2CO3, that is a bicarbonate. This bicarbonate decrease will be said. This bicarbonate will break down into the tubular luminal fluids. So that when it is break down, the H2 water will be separated, bicarbonate will be this will be separated. So what will be happening? So mostly because of this, there will be more bicarbonate levels can be seen. This more bicarbonate levels that can be passes into the urine, and then because of this inhibition, there is a breakdown of the bicarbonate. There is a breakdown of bicarbonate, and then it may causes this bicarbonate can be passes into the urine. This acetazolamide causes the production of alkaline urine, and then which is accompanied by the sodium and potassium. So moreover, it can be available as a 250 mg mostly. Not only this acetazolamide used for intraocular to decrease lowering the intraocular pressure and gastric HCl, decreasing the HCl secretion also it can be used, and to increase the carbon dioxide level in the brain also it can be used, and to lowering the pH and alteration in the carbon dioxide transportation in the lungs. So to alter the carbon dioxide transportation in the lungs, to lower the pH transportation in the lungs, and to increase the carbon dioxide levels in the brain, this can be used. So moreover, because the carbon dioxide is also been separated. So available forms mostly 250 mg it will be available. Edema, mostly it can, indications means edema, mostly edema. Sometimes in case of cerebral edema also it can be used, and in case of glaucoma, so this drug is used to decrease the intraocular pressure. So in glaucoma mostly there will be increased, so it can be given. Epilepsy, so epilepsy it can be given. And then acute mountain sickness, so we'll go with the asthmatic diuretics. When we go with the asthmatic diuretics, we have a well-known drug, commonly used drug in what's generally using, that is a mannitol. So this is the mannitol drug. This can be it can be freely filtered at the glomerulus and poorly reabsorbed in the renal tubules, and relatively it may have a pharmacological effect. So these asthmatic diuretics mostly it will be used in the cerebral edema. Very rarely it can be used in the that is a kidney failures or kidney in any glomerular problems. At that time it can be used. So mostly mannitol, it is a non-electrolyte and low molecular weight. So it is a non-electrolyte and low molecular weight thing, and then it can be given as a IV infusion mostly. And then mostly one more thing is that these increases the extracellular osmolarity caused by the IV administration of the mannitol, induces the movement of intracellular water into the extracellular and vascular spaces. So it helps us to movement of water from the intracellular to the extracellular and some the vascular spaces. So this action is basis by which mannitol will reduces, and the mannitol it also helps to reduces the intracranial pressure, intracranial edema, and elevated ocular pressure. It can help us to reduce. Mannitol readily it can be sometimes we can use it in the you can help us to use the impaired kidney function. When there is an impaired kidney function also it can be used. And mostly in mannitol, tubular reabsorption of the water and increasing the sodium and chloride excretion. So because of the sodium and chloride excretion by elevating osmolarity of GFR. So mostly it is available in the IV infusion. That is a 10% and 20% solutions. Will we see the indications and dosages to reduce the cerebral edema, intracranial pressure, intraocular pressure. Mostly it should be given in 30 to 60 minutes. Sometimes it can be indicated before surgery also, and then before any cranial surgeries. And treatment of oliguria, when we go with the treatment of oliguria, adult dose it can be given below the 12 years. Above the 12 years only adults, and above the 12 years children. That is mg is 50 to 100 grams. That is in percentage, we'll take it as a percentage, no. So that is a 20% of IV solution that has to be given for 90 minutes. That is. And then diuretics in drug intoxication. So when there is a diuretics in drug intoxication, it can be given as a 5%, 10% and 50-20% of the solution. That is up to 200 mg. 200 grams it can be given, because to maintain the positive balance for them. 100 to 500 ml positive balance should be maintained. For that purpose, in case of diuresis drug intoxication, it can be given. When we see the drug interactions, when the patient in drug interaction, nephrotoxic drugs, so aminoglycosides, cyclosporins, so may increase the renal toxicity. When we give with this combination with aminoglycosides, cyclosporins, there may be a chance of renal toxicity, and sometimes may leads to the renal failure also. Definitely lithium, when we given with combination with lithium, the mannitol may increase the urinary secretion or lithium levels. Because of this, definitely we have to monitor the lithium levels daily. Adverse effects, so common adverse effects, that is a headache, dizziness, seizures, edema, hypertension, and then sometimes the patient may have a congestive heart failure also. So generally in GI system, definitely you have to write the nausea. The patient may be having a nausea, vomiting, sometimes dryness of the mouth. And then metabolic, there will be chance of the fluid and electrolyte balance in case of diuresis. And then ENT, in ENT problems, mostly the patient will be having, because the patient will be having a cerebral edema and all sorts of complications, so they will be blurred visions. Well, we'll see with the nursing considerations. When we see with the nursing consideration, definitely we have to assess the patient vital signs, BP. When the patient is in standing position and supine position, definitely we have to see the BP, and we have to palpate for the pulse, respiration. In respiration, we will see the rate, depth, rhythm, and lung sounds also can be. So before and after administration of the drug, definitely BP has to be monitored. So we have to see for ocular assessment. In these cases, vision problems or intraocular pressure can be assessed, and assess for ocular status. How we will assess ocular status, neurological status? We will see the signs and symptoms of the increased ICP. If there is there, we have to stop or we have to continue. It has to be discussed later. And renal status, definitely we have to see for the renal status, but because it has to be excreted through it, so we have to see the that is a there's a blood urea, nitrogen, creatinine, uric acid, and that has to be monitored. And moreover, fluid electrolyte balance should be maintained. So fluid electrolyte IO chat, edema, hydration, weight changes, ABG, CBC, serum levels, that has to be monitored. And then assess for metabolic acidosis. So restlessness, drowsiness, hydration status, we have to see. Hydration, how will we see hydration status? We'll see by the dry mucosa, skin turgor, and thirst. So all this we'll see. Instruct the patient to drink the water 8 to 10 glasses. If indicated itself, it has to be given. If contraindicated, we should not advise. Sometimes the patient will be on the IV fluids. Instruct the patient to. So definitely in all, when we see the all nursing considerations of this pharmacology, we are discussing that the patient should not change his position suddenly. So to prevent the postural hypotension or syncope. And advise that definitely it should be taken with any food or a milk to prevent the GI, to suppress the GI symptoms. And instruct the patient to avoid potassium rich diet. So what is the potassium rich diet? Oranges, salt substitutes, some of the dried apricots, bananas and dates, alcohol. Definitely we ask the patient to avoid the alcohol and caffeine type of drugs. And then one more thing is the smoking. And then advise the patient to take the drug as per the schedule. And then and one more thing, we ask them to instruct them to not to stop the drug or not to modify the drug therapy without physician consent. When the patient is experiencing some of these warning signs or some of these symptoms, we have to report it. That is sometimes drowsiness, muscle cramps, weakness, dizziness, nausea, joint pains, diarrhea, lethargy, headache, blurred vision, and changes in the weight, or sometimes changes in the weight, rashes. When we see in the adverse effects, sometimes the bleeding problems also there, and bleeding or blurring problems, that has to also be reported priorly. So with this, we will complete the antihypertensives. Antihypertensives is a very big topic. So antihypertensives are angiotensin that has been classified into the angiotensin converting enzymes, converting enzyme inhibitors, and angiotensin receptor inhibitors, some of the vasodilators, and then central sympathetics symphorathetics, and then calcium channel blockers and diuretics. So moreover, this diuretic is also very important. So in diuretics, it can be divided as a high efficacy drugs, medium efficacy drugs, and weak efficacy. So in high efficacy drugs, we will have a furosemide, and medium one of the example, and we can take it as a medium efficacy drugs. We can see this our there is a favorite drug, thiazides, and moreover chlorothiazides. And then one more thing, it's having a potassium sparing drugs. When we see the potassium sparing drugs, in potassium sparing diuretics, that is nothing but the aldosterone. So some aldosterone. So with this, today's topic is completed. Thank you.